This is Brother Medina for the Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist Church, and please let us start this session with a word of prayer. Loving Father, please be with us as we explain ourselves to everyone. Please help everyone listening to get the true idea and the true picture of what we are seeing. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. Well, we have a special program that is taking place right now, and this program will go for 1 hour. The name of this program is The Meaning of a Republic. The Meaning of a Republic. Now, why do we see the need to have such a program like this even after Republic Day has passed? It is because we are hearing that institutions are going to be set up to teach what it means to be a republic. And we need to make sure people truly understand what it means to be a republic. When you hear the president speak about a republic, you hear other officials and other intellectuals speak about a republic. They usually speak about the political change that constitutes the change of into a republic, and not the philosophy and the meaning behind the political change which makes a republic a republic. And so we want to show you what makes a republic a true republic. And this is the reason why we are having this study today with you. We're going to feature different points in this program to show you the true meaning of a republic, so that the next time you celebrate Republic Day, you would celebrate it with the meaning of what it means to be a republic.
Yes. Grace and peace, good day. My name is Brother Comey. Right? Republicanism is a system of governance where the rights and freedoms of the citizens are guaranteed and protected. The rights of all men are 3 basic rights: the right to serve God, the right to life, and the right to private property. And a republican form of governance guarantees the protection of these rights and freedoms. In such a government, there should be no legislation of religion, no protection of religion, and no prohibition of religion. You know, and this is what is constituted in a republican form of government.
Republicanism is a form of government that protects the rights and freedom of men. And in that government, there is no establishment of religion by law, no prohibition of religion by law, no protection of religion by law. It is to keep morality and equality amongst the nation. Rights and freedom is not given or formed by man, but it came from God and is to be protected by the state.
Republicanism is the best form of government. They do not take away rights and freedoms like communism and communion. Amen.
Yes, my dear people. Republicanism is the philosophy behind the political changes that constitutes a republic. Usually when you ask a person what is a republic, they say, well, we don't have a queen. We have separation of powers. We have a legislature, etc. These are the things they usually say. But these things do not explain what a republic is. In other words, the question is this: what really constitutes the essence of republicanism? Point number 1, people point to the fact that we have political changes that make a republic, and they tell us that we have a president instead of a king. But the question is, why do we have a president instead of a king? Why was it necessary to have a president instead of a king? We are also told that some of the political changes in a republic implies or means that leaders rule by the consent of the governed, who are elected by democratic voting for limited periods of times in office instead of hereditary rulers. But then why don't we have hereditary rulers? Why do we have leaders that are duly elected by the people? For what sake? For what purpose? To what end? This is the question that we need to understand. We are also told that we have an elected representative body to legislate instead of a hand-picked body of by hereditary rulers. There were days when you had hereditary rulers hand-picking people. and the handpicking of people was what constituted a legislative body. But now we are told that we're supposed to have an elected representative body. But why? Why an elected representative body? Why do we have such a thing? And what do the leaders tell us? They don't tell us why. They just tell us we have this, and they just tell us to secure our independence, but they don't tell us why. Furthermore, we are told that we have equality of all citizens under law and not the divine right of kings and privileges for rulers above the people. But why not the divine right of kings? And why not privileges for the friends of the kings and the rulers above the people? Why we do not have such a thing? They don't tell us why. So again, these are the things that we need to answer to show you the meaning of a republic. Also, we are told we have rule by law instead of rule by the decree of a king. Why must we have rule by law instead of rule by the decree of a king? What was the purpose for such a thing like this? Also, we are told of separation of powers, the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive, and we are told that we have this instead of the governmental powers being controlled by the leaders, because this would be tyranny. But why don't we have these powers controlled all in one by a leader or by a few people that have authority? Why don't we have that? Why do we have separation of powers? For what purpose? Towards what end? This is what we need to look at. Also, we are told under a republic we have a Bill of Rights to limit the tyranny of rulers from over the people. The question we ask again is, why do we have a Bill of Rights? Yes, my dear people, for what purpose? You see, my dear people, the answer to all these things is for the sake of securing and protecting the rights of the people. The point we are looking at here is this: all these political changes are towards one end, just one end, for the sake of securing and protecting the rights of the people. But why seek to secure and protect the rights of the people? This is done because the rights and freedoms of the people are in fact inalienable, which means they are God-ordained, given by God, and they are inviolable, which means they ought not to be violated. It is because these rights are given by God, inalienable, and they are inviolable, not to be violated. It is because of this that there should be securing and protection of the rights of a people. And this is the reason why we have a republic. The political changes in a republic is for the sake of securing and protecting the rights and freedoms of the people.
Yeah. Grace and peace. My name is Sister Anne-Marie. What I'm going to show is what is really a republic form of government. A republic is one that respects your rights and freedom.
Good day to all. I am here to talk about republicanism and the protection of all rights and freedoms, and that is what republicanism is all about. It is the protection of rights and freedoms of all citizens, and government are instituted to protect these rights, and they are not supposed to make or form laws that are against the rights and freedoms of all. All are protected under law, under republicanism.
Now, dear people, there are two types of republics that exist in the world today. Two types of republics. They can be categorized as, number one, a Jeffersonian republic, and number two, a Jacobinian republic. These are the two types of republics that exist in the world today. A Jeffersonian republic named after Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence. This kind of republic is called a free republic or a rights republic. And the Jacobinian republic, which came in the French Revolution, which was created and fomented by the Jacobins, this kind of republic is today called a socialist republic. A socialist republic. But a socialist republic is a sham republic. It's a false republic. It is not a true republic, because the principles that make a republic and that make republicanism does not exist in that sham republic. So let us look at the real meaning of a Jeffersonian republic. Yes, my dear people, the facts are, let me quote for you some statements by Thomas Jefferson. Here is what he said, I quote. He said this: "The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind." End of quote. Did you get that? We are actually being told that all other types of government are either secretly or openly at war with the rights and freedoms of man, but our true republic, a republic, is the only form of government that is not at secret and open war with the rights of man. Yes, my dear people. Furthermore, we are told by Thomas Jefferson again, when he spoke to Mr. Washington, George Washington, he said this: "The hereditary branches of modern governments," and that was in his time, all this was in 1784, he said this: "The hereditary branches of modern governments are the patrons of privilege and prerogative, and not of the natural rights of the people, whose oppressors they generally are." End of quote. So what is he telling us? He's telling us that when you have hereditary rulers and branches of government, we are being told that they are the patron of privileges and prerogatives for the few wealthy rulers. And we're told to do this, they disregard the natural rights of the people and become oppressors of the people through interfering with their rights and freedoms. This is what we are being told by Thomas Jefferson. And so we are seeing here that a republic emphasizes rights and freedoms, the protection of rights and freedoms. Furthermore, I am reading from a document by the name of Republicanism in the United States. Here is what it tells us, I quote: "Republicanism is a political value system that has been a major part of American civic thought since the American Revolution." And then we are told, it stresses liberty. Now get this clear. Listen very carefully. We are told, it stresses liberty and unalienable rights as central values. Did you get that? So a true republic will emphasize liberty and unalienable rights as central values. And this is what a republic is all about. Trinidad and Tobago is a Jeffersonian type of republic. China is a Jacobinian type of republic. The kind of republic we are Jeffersonian in its type. And we are being told its core emphasis is on alienable rights and liberty as central values. And we're continuing here. It says, it makes the people as a whole sovereign, rejects aristocracy and inherited political power, expects citizens to be independent in their performance of civic duties, and vilifies corruption. American republicanism was founded and first practiced by the founding fathers in the 18th century. End of quote. So this is what republicanism is all about. And this is the reason why, if we take a look at the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, we would see that the reason for not having a king in this kind of republicanism, Jeffersonian republicanism, or a free republic, the reason for not having a king was to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. The reason for having separation of powers was to secure and protect the rights of the people. And this is what people need to understand. A republic is about the security and also the protecting of rights and freedoms. As I take this little booklet here, and I read from this little booklet here that has the Declaration of Independence, here is what we are told. I quote, in this statement here, we are actually reading republicanism in this Declaration of Independence. I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. End of quote. Did you see that? So here is the essence of republicanism. Your rights and your freedoms come from God. As a result of that, they are inalienable. And by inalienable means, since they come from God, they cannot be separated from you. They are part and parcel of your being. This is what we are being told.
Republicanism is a government that respects our rights and freedoms, which is given by God. Amen.
The American Declaration of Independence, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." My people, this is what a republic is all about.
Furthermore, my dear people, the fact that republicanism was set up in the United States because of the tyranny of George III, King George III, and it was meant to deal with the tyranny of government and the tyranny of religious leaders. All this is clearly seen as we read a few quotations from this booklet, from the Declaration of Independence. I quote, it says this: "The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of reputed injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world." End of quote. And then we are told some of the things that the king did that took away their rights and freedoms. A little lower down we are told, he has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. End of quote. Did you see that? So all these were the abuses of King George III, and many, many more, which is written in this book. Let me give you one more quotation. It says this: "In every stage of these oppositions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked in every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people." End of quote. So in the Declaration of Independence, you see why America broke away from England. They broke away to establish a republic. And what was this republic all about? Freeing their people from tyranny, the tyranny of the king. So why not a king? Why a president instead? Because a president is elected by the people for a small period of time. Yes, my dear people. And this president is not a hereditary ruler. Because if a person is a hereditary ruler, that person will always say that no one can remove him from power because he has the right to rule over people and he would do what he wants.
The Republican Constitution is a tree of liberty planted by God to shelter our rights and our freedoms. Tyrannical governments plant their thorns and thistles to stifle these God-given rights.
Yes, my dear people, the fact that Trinidad and Tobago is a Jeffersonian type of republic is clearly seen when we look at certain clauses of the Republican Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. I am quoting from page 11 of this Constitution. Here is what we are told, I quote, "Whereas the people of Trinidad and Tobago, A, have affirmed that the nation of Trinidad and Tobago is founded upon principles that acknowledge the supremacy of God, faith in fundamental human rights and freedoms, the position of the family in a society of free men and free institutions, the dignity of the human person, and the equal and inalienable rights with which all members of the human family are endowed by their Creator," end of quote. Did you see that? So the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago clearly tells us that our rights and freedoms are inalienable. They come from God. And once they are inalienable, it simply means that they are supposed to be inviolable, not to be violated. This is what we are being told here. Furthermore, on page 16, here is one of the subheadings. It says, protection of rights and freedoms. Yes, my dear people. And so we need to understand that the reason for having a republic, the reason for the political changes that makes the frame of a republic is the security and protection of rights and freedoms. So what does Republic Day mean? What does a republic mean? It means that there is a state here where the rights and freedoms of man are protected. They are secured and protected. Why? Because those rights and freedoms are inalienable. They come from God, hence they are not separated from the being of human beings, and they are inviolable, which means they ought not to be violated. That's why there must be a security and the protection of the rights and freedoms. This is what a republic is all about.
Republicanism is a philosophy that acknowledges the rights and freedoms of all men as being inalienable and inviolable. That is, they were given to us by God, they are inalienable, and as such, they are not to be violated by anyone. They are inviolable. Such a philosophy, when used as the premise for the construction of the constitution of a land, produces the best constitution possible for a society in terms of governing the social sphere of things. That is a republican constitution. This is so because this constitution guarantees the rights and freedoms of all, and therefore secures a free course for the preaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ, so that men may come to know the great God Yahweh, who is the source of their liberty. With such a constitution, there will be no establishment of religion by law, there will be no prohibition of religion by law, and there will be no protection of religion by law. The teaching of republicanism, therefore, truly is a blessing from God to a sinful world. Now, what is a republic? A republic, therefore, is a country or a state or a land that functions based on the principles of a republican constitution, or a constitution that embodies republican principles. Those principles that acknowledges your rights and freedoms as inalienable and inviolable.
Now what we are looking at here is a beautiful explanation by Brother Shannon, who is the director for the Tusian Institute of Religious Liberty. There was a display that we had in the library on what is republicanism. And here Brother Shannon clearly explains what constitutes a republic by pointing to certain charts in the library.
Now if you look to the first graphic, you will notice at the side of each graphic there's a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there are 5 components to the wall, the Republican Liberties Wall. In the first component, you have the major, you have the starting point, the core, the heart. So the first graphic entails the heart of the entire wall, and it starts off with God, Creator. And as you come down the stairs, you have just below the globe with the creator on it, the rights of God. And of course those are creator rights, that's not creation rights, this is creator rights. That's the rights of God. Just below it you have the rights of man, and it says just above, God is the giver and commander of human rights and freedoms. You go a little lower, you see, as creator, God possessed the sole right to rule every sector of his universe. So he is universal ruler by virtue of he possessing the rights of God as creator. You come a little lower down and you see God is the source and giver of law. And that's natural given that he is creator. And he has given the 10 Commandments, and that is moral law. So you have the rule of law, and that is the 10 Commandments. All law comes from the 10 Commandments. So the concept of the rule of law begins at that point. And that's the voice of God, his command voice. And you go a little lower and you come to the final point, the Republican nation state. And just above it have the free society created by the Republican Constitution. The rule of derivative law. So Republican constitutionalism is really the rule of derivative law because it derived from the 10 Commandments. By republicanism being structured upon the rights of man, and the rights of man is embedded in the 10 Commandments, republicanism is therefore a derivative of the 10 Commandments. So when we talk about Republican constitutionalism, what we are speaking about is the rule of derivative law. Now just below this you come to an expansion of a point in the chart 1. You come to an expansion. In this expansion you have God's right to rule. So this gives more detail of the point that God is ruler. It expands the details of God's right to rule, and it starts with his three rights: his right to be worshipped alone by all, his right to be the lone source of knowledge and revelation, and his right to be judge of all. Of course, those are evident, self-evident realities. The fact that God is creator, these possessions, these properties, these qualities of him are natural. He's the creator, so he obviously will be the lone source of knowledge and revelation. He alone should be worshipped, and he alone could be judged. On the next side here, we see that he is moral ruler. This deals with the domains of his rule. He is moral ruler of the heart of mankind. He's political ruler of the globe as well. And he is ruler of the non-intelligent realms of the universe. So not only that he is ruler of the heart, that he's political ruler, but of course he commands the unintelligent world. So he could command the sea, he could command the atmosphere, he commands everything. He has control of it. There aren't anything in creation that God doesn't have a command of. So he's not only commander of our behavior, he's also commander of the physical universe, the unintelligent physical universe. And of course, the last part of the graphic is God is king, which means he's the universal executive. God is the lawgiver. He is the universal legislator. God is judge, universal judiciary. Okay, so that was the second graphic. We come to the third graphic, and it says the inalienable and inviolable rights of man. Inalienable simply means these rights came from God, and inviolable means that it ought not to be violated. They are inviolable. We ought not to violate these rights that we all have. And that's the weight it places on the mind of human beings, that these rights are untouchable and we ought not to interfere with them. The first right is the right of religious liberty.
Brother Shannon, could you explain what is inalienable and inviolable? What is the meaning of those two terms?
Inalienable means that rights, they cannot be, the conclusion of it is that it has one source, which is alien to human beings, alien to creation. The rights are inalienable means they came from God. They came from the Creator, not man, not the will of the majority, not evolution, by chance either. So inalienable simply means it came from the source of these rights. The cause of these rights are outside of creation, outside of man. So governments that seek to manage these rights are out of place, because governments, the men that operate governments, have been given these rights by God as well. And these rights are equal rights. So they are inalienable, and that's what inalienable means. Inviolable means that they ought not to be violated. They are untouchable. They do not belong to the powers of man. We cannot, by virtue of whatever authority we have, cannot and ought not to violate these rights, infringe on them, redefine them, restructure them. No. These rights are inviolable because they are given to us by God. And just below it you have, God created us with these 3 rights, these possessions that we all have. But He also created us with 8 personal freedoms. And these freedoms are functional powers that allow us to exercise the rights. So these freedoms are powers that we have, capacities that we have, that allow us to exercise the right. If we didn't have freedom of thought, we will not be able to think out knowledge or information as to how we ought to preserve these rights. So you have freedom of thought, you have freedom of belief, you have freedom of conscience, you have freedom of choice, you have freedom of opinion. These are 5 freedoms that belong to the private domain of the heart. They are beyond reach. We can't access them just like that. But there are capabilities that we were designed with, that when you function them, when you operate them, that is exactly how it is you exercise your rights. So you can't exercise your right to life, or you can't exercise your right to private property without utilizing these freedoms. You can't acquire property without first learning how to, which is why you have to use freedom of thought. You can't acquire property either if you don't believe in the property or the resources you are pursuing. You can't have movement to acquire either if you don't first utilize freedom of choice, or your choice to choose what you're going to pursue, what you're going to acquire, what you're going after. So these freedoms make us who we are. But let's go to the second domain. Whilst you have the first domain, the core domain of freedoms.
Brother Shannon, let me just ask you something. When you say the private domain,
Yes.
What do you mean by the private domain?
It means that that's the domain of freedoms that is private to everyone else. Because it is inner. You can't see it unless it is manifested in some form of behavior, be it words, be it actions, external actions, and so on. So it is private because it belongs to the domain of the heart, the domain of the mind. So it is called private domain freedoms. Of course, God have access to it, so He could convict us and speak to our hearts. However, in order for anybody to become aware of what's going on in that domain of freedoms, it must be seen by either speech, expression, or movement of some form to indicate it. So you can't see it just like that because it is not manifested, it is not observable like that, because it belongs to the domain of the mind, the heart. And you have, of course, the public domain of freedoms, which is freedom of speech. When you speak, You are hearing me right now, so I'm utilizing freedom of speech. I'm also utilizing freedom of expression. I'm gesticulating. I'm using my hands, so that's expression. And I'm moving in between, I'm pointing to the chart and so on, so I'm using freedom of movement. So here is an example of these freedoms in our current interaction. My gestures, my pointing, my words, all of this is the public domain freedoms. And that's the reason why you can capture what it is that we are discussing in our interaction. And this small graphic below identify the core freedoms as the freedoms that give us personal independence, self-determination, personal sovereignty.
Could you explain what is personal independence?
Well, we are independent beings because of these freedoms. We are not who we are by virtue of being a group. We weren't designed to be a group. We were designed to be individuals. And an individual is an individual because of these freedoms. Each person having these private domain freedoms make us personally independent. We don't have to wait upon another to function, to be a whole person. These freedom makes us independent persons, independent individuals with personal sovereignty. So we have an autonomous conscience. We can make decisions free from anyone else. We decide what we pursue. We choose what we pursue by our own selves. So we exercise these freedoms independently, not dependent of others. Of course, this is not excluding the influence of the Creator upon the mind. But these freedoms make us independent. And the same thing, it makes us, it gives us self-determination. We determine the course of action we pursue. We determine our future. Therefore, we have self-determination by virtue of these rights and freedoms. These rights and freedoms, as a compound, gives us the right to self-determination. And this brings us to the last graphic. Republican governance, which is protection of the rights and freedoms of all, separation of powers, the absolute and immutable rule of law. That's the essence of Republican governance. Of course, it goes down.
Brother Shannon, could you explain what is the separation of powers?
The separation of powers is simply that as human beings going to be operating the government, so you cannot have the powers centralized into one individual or group of individuals. It's dangerous. So based upon a text of scripture, republicanism have been built to separate the powers of government into three divisions: the executive, the legislature, and the you have one more.
The judiciary.
The judiciary. By separating that way, you allow the divisions to function independently, and wherein if one division is going off, you could have other divisions intervene. So it's a check in the system of Republican governance. It's a check that is necessary. It's a check that creates a safeguard to the rights and freedoms of man. So it is needful within a Republican government system. And of course, the absolute and immutable rule of law. Remember what underpins this, as we saw before. It's the law of God that underpins it. So when you come to human rights, to the rights of man, the rights of man can't be changed. If anybody was to change it, that would have to be God. So the rights of man, the freedoms of man are unchangeable. How are you going to change freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of conscience. Those things can't change. They're unchangeable. So the laws that protect those freedoms and those rights has to be immutable and unchangeable as well.
Could we use the statement born free, created free? Because
Yes.
it cannot be changed.
Since you were born that way, you were created that way. Who can change those realities but God? And certainly God isn't going to change them. So, the absolute and immutable rule of law. The rule of law, therefore, must contain provisions that are immutable and absolute when it comes to the protection of the rights and freedoms of man. And that's what the whole of republicanism is about. Protecting the rights and freedoms of man. Just below it you have Republican constitutionalism. And what does a constitution consist of? What does it constitute? The defined authority, powers and jurisdiction of government in order to prevent tyranny. Limits, checks and balances to protect the people's rights from government encroachment. And a Bill of Rights acknowledging and declaring the rights and freedoms of the people. So the Bill of Rights must state, must acknowledge the rights of the people and the freedoms of the people.
Why do you call it a Republican Constitution?
It's a Republican Constitution because in it contains one chief, the heart of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is that area of constitutional law that states the rights that the government acknowledge and the freedoms that they declare. So it is declarations of rights and freedoms that are acknowledged by constitutional law, therein to protect the people of the country. So it's a constitution having these major areas. These are the critical components that constitute Republican constitutionalism. And you go a little further, you come to religious liberty law, because this is the chief area of the Constitution. No establishment of religion by law, no prohibition of religion by law, and no protection of religion by law. So, however you word the clauses of religious liberty to guarantee religious freedom, liberty of conscience and so on, these are the things that must not be done. No establishment of religion by law, no prohibition of religion by law, and no protection of religion by law.
Suppose you claim that your religion is truth. Why not establish something that is truthful?
If you claim that everybody claims that their religion is truth. Nobody claims that their own isn't truth. If it is truth, then truth can stand on its own and without the need of protection or establishment. If a group of persons are pursuing or lobbying the government to establish their religion by law or to protect their religion by law, religion originates with God or with some God. And if that's your claim, why not pray to your God or rely upon your God to give protection to your religion? Why call upon the government to protect? God is greater than government. He's more powerful than men. Then why not he? He seems to be the best to protect it. So why seek to get it established by law or to prohibit others by law? That reflects the deficiency of a religion when something like that is done. And it is not to the benefit of the adherents of the religion that they are seeking to protect. And of course, we go to the last part, where you have something like that, the creation of a free society. So the Constitution creates the free society. A republic is a free society. And in a free society, you must have freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, so you must have religious liberty, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech out of the press, and you must have social, political, and economic freedoms. And this brings us to the prevail of equity and justice in such a society. You're going to have the protection of rights and freedoms, or protection of rights and freedoms ensures the flourishing of personal freedoms effects. So once the society is free, you're going to have the flourishing of personal freedoms. Persons will be able to pursue whatever enterprise they desire, and it's going to develop and so on. If it is good or bad, it's going to collapse during the course of it. It's going to face criticisms, and it's very likely the criticisms will act as a check as well at a level of concept to deal with it. So you're going to have the prevail of equity and justice in such a society. You're going to have the growth of religious diversity, and that encourages religious tolerance and non-emotive religious behaviors. So when it comes to religion, this ought not to be an emotional matter. When people are seeking to get their religion protected by law, they are operating emotionally. That's not to operate scientific. That's not to operate rational. And that goes against truth, because you don't rob the people of hearing what are the criticisms against that particular religion. You rob the people of that. So
what about a person's conscience in regards to even a false religion or a religion that is of truth?
Yes, you violate the person's conscience by going against his freedoms to exercise it. And you seeking protection obviously going to prohibit the next person from criticizing your religion, or that religion in particular. So there is always those things, once such actions are pursued, it's going to do harm to the rights and freedoms of others. And of course, the last point in equity and justice is effective administration of justice secures the certainty and stability of society. And that is what causes a country to grow economically, such as America.
Could you explain to me what is administration of justice?
The administration of justice is that you're going to have a system of justice in your country that should do two things: protect the rights and freedoms of man, and two, have a system of redress for violations or infractions of those rights and freedoms. Once that is done, once you have effective administration of justice, it's going to secure the certainty and the stability of the society. If that is not the case, if it doesn't have effective administration, then you open the way for all manner of violations to occur. And if that is going on, then crime is going to increase rapidly. And if crime is increasing, then this is what it is saying to the world. And outsiders will not want to come here because they know their rights and freedoms are not secured. They know they cannot get justice, it's not effectively administrated. So you're not going to have certainty and stability of society.
There is a phrase, habeas corpus. Could you explain the administration of justice in regards to habeas corpus, right?
Again, that was in the process of habeas corpus had to do with the protection of the rights of man, because in that time you first had the Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta seek to control the powers of the king, to limit the powers of the king. And along the way we had the habeas corpus that had to do with protecting. You can't just jail a person for expression and criticism of government leaders, top religious leaders. You can't do things like that. So it was in the interest of the protection of the rights and freedoms of man.
So that is within the free trial and...
Yes. A jury trial.
By jury.
Having a process that has to do with the administration of justice. Effective administration of justice must mean that you have a trial for convicted persons, and the trial is going to have fair procedures in order to accomplish just ends. So that is critical to effective administration of justice. And remember, justice has to do with the protection or respecting of the rights and freedoms of man. If you violate those rights, you was unjust. If you protect the rights or you respect the rights, then you are just in your relations to your fellow man. And of course the last graphic, which is very fundamental in the whole thing, is a comparison. A comparison between the nature of God and the nature of man. So you have God on one side, and if you notice the arrows are pointing this way. So he is the cause of all of this on the right hand side. So you have God and you have man. He's the creator, man is the creation. He has an independent nature, but we have a dependent nature. We can't survive on our own. We need God to sustain our existence. God has his rights, so you have the rights of God on one side, you have the rights of man on the next side. God is the giver of rights and freedoms. Man is the recipient of rights and freedoms. God is the giver of law. Man is the recipient of law. God is the ruler. Man is the ruled. God is king. We are subject. God is God alone. The conclusion. Creation is creation alone. So, I conclude, human beings cannot be gods with God. And if you notice, this is kind of lying down. It is the fundamentals of political thought.
Fundamental of political thought.
Yeah.
Could you explain that a little?
Politicians must understand that they are not gods to the people. They are man. So a politician must understand, I am a creation. I'm a dependent being. I have rights that have been given to me by God. I'm a recipient of rights and freedoms, a recipient of law. I am the rule, so I can't act like any of these on the left side. So this is the grid of political thought. This is the foundation of political thought. If this is the foundation, then you will come to this. You know what? Then I should protect the rights and freedoms of man, because we are not gods. And we can't give or take from any human being his or her rights and freedoms.
Good day, my people. I'm here to tell you a bit about republicanism, alright? A republican form of government respects and protects the rights of its citizens. It is inalienable. It is God endowed. Our rights are from God and are not man-made. Our rights, our freedom. Know it, protect it, respect it.
I'm Brother Roger Hume. I'm the head of the research officer of the Tusian Institute for Religious Liberty. Now, there are two types of republics. One, there is a Jeffersonian republic, which shows that the rights and freedoms of man comes from God. It is inalienable and inviolable. And secondly, there is the Jacobinian Socialist Republic, which is based upon that the rights comes from man or nature. Now, what happened is that I have a book in my hand called In the Minds of Men by Ian Taylor. This book strikes at the root, destroying the concept that rights and freedom comes from man, and that man came by evolution. Now, this book, funny enough, was printed in Russian in 1995. In fact, the Deputy Minister of Education, Mrs. Olga, she called up the author and told him that this book, In the Minds of Men, must be published in all universities in Russia and high schools. So this book is presently in Russia in all high schools and in universities. He made a formal presentation in 1995 to the Russian Ministry of Education. Now, what again is the real value of this book? This book hit at the roots of the against the socialist, Jacobinian Socialist Republic, which claims that since man comes by nature or man gives rights, then man could, by legislation, take away one's rights. But the Jeffersonian Republic shows that God created us with rights and freedom. Therefore, no one has the right to take away those rights and freedom.
The Republican form of government is
best form of government because it does not legislate religion or legislate against religion, but it protects our rights and freedoms which was given by God and not man. Under a republican form of government, these 3 basic rights and 8 freedoms are to be protected by the government. The 3 rights of man are the right to life, the right to serve God, and the right to private property. And our 8 freedoms are freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of conscience, freedom of opinion, freedom of choice, expression, speech, and movement. Even though we have these 3 rights and 8 freedoms, we are not to use them to sin against God.
Occasionally, you have seen brethren from our church explaining just what a republic is, because we stand for educating the church into all these important truths and facts. And as we come to the close of this wonderful program, let us look at what a republic again is all about. Point number 1, behind the political changes that frames the republic is the acknowledgement that the rights and freedoms of the people are inalienable. That means they are God-given, thus cannot be separated from man, and they are inviolable, that is, they are not to be violated by anyone. Point number 2, the political changes are for the sake of securing and protecting the rights and freedoms of man. Yes, my dear people, thus to recognize a true republic and to celebrate Republic Day is to acknowledge that the rights and freedoms of man are inalienable, that is, they come from God and therefore cannot be separated from man, and they are inviolable, that is, they are not to be violated. And point number 2, you also have to acknowledge that the rights and freedoms are to be protected, secured and protected by government. This is what a republic is all about. Now we hope this special program has been a blessing to you. Now you understand the values of being a republic. Now you see the sense and duty of Trinidad and Tobago being a republic with its republican constitution. We acknowledge that our rights and freedoms come from God. We acknowledge that they're supposed to be secured and protected by government. That's simple facts, and that's the simple meaning of a republic. And what we are going to do now is to give you this program if you wish for it. So all you have to do is to call us at the numbers you see at the bottom of your screen, 625-0446, 625-0446. Also, you would see 755-9006, 755-9006. And you're seeing passing before your screen here various web addresses that we have. Pay special attention to Tuesday SDA Gospel, and in these you will get more further information. And until then, may God bless you, may God bless our republic, and may you appreciate what it means to be a Republican. In Jesus' holy name, amen.